Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Grassy, and today we're going to be looking into what are timers. So, by the end of this video, we're going to be answering these three questions, and that is what is a timer, why do games use them, and how can we use them for our own projects? Let's get straight into it. So, I am using the Unreal Engine 5 first person template, however, it does not matter compared to the line trace video. It doesn't matter what template or what project you're in. You can do this in any project, or you don't even have to follow along. You can just watch and learn. I'm going to do this in my character blueprint, and we're going to go into begin play because we want this to happen as soon as our game starts, just for very simple terms. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make a debug key T, and this will just be for later on, okay? So you don't have to worry about it right now. What we're going to do is I'm going to go and type set timer by, and you can see we've got a few options. You got pause, set, unpause timer, all that stuff. We're going to start off with set timer by event and set timer by function name. Let's do this one first. So what is a timer? A timer is how it sounds. It's basically just a way of timing things. You can either use it for looping. So if you want functions to be looped over and over again, or certain mechanics to be constantly looping over again, or if you want a delay. So these actually can just take over the delay node. You don't even need the delay node anymore if you have this set timer. It's a lot better than a delay node. Delay nodes I usually don't like using just because of how janky they are, and also because I have heard that they can result in problems down the line in your project if you're working on multiplayer games, because the delay node, you're constantly delaying everyone, and that can cause problems with updating everyone to the servers, stuff like that, blah blah blah. I could be wrong, so let me know in the comments if I am wrong, but I just have heard things that delays aren't just the best to use. They're more just like an every now and then, maybe okay. But I would personally try and get used to using timers because they're just so much better. You can use them for both, and they're more clean as well. So set timer by event. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a custom event, and let's just call this test. All right. I'm going to put this under here. We'll put this here first. And so you can see that set timer has a bunch of inputs and one output variable. Okay. So we're going to plug this in here first. And we're going to go, hey, cool. This event input is saying, hey, what event do we want to delegate the firing off to, the trigger to? What this is meaning is that a delegate is giving your workload to someone else or something else to do it for you. So you imagine if, let's say, you're with a bunch of housemates, or you got a bunch of roommates, right? And you got to do the laundry or the dishes, something like that. And you then have to go to the shops, or you have an emergency you got to go to, and you say, hey man, can you please go and do the laundry for me? I'm supposed to do it, but I got to go do this. And they're like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. What you've done is you've delegated your task, your workload, over to someone else to do it for you. And so that's basically what it is. A delegate is saying, hey, in this timer, it's going to, when it sets, when on begin play, when it sets a timer, it's going to say, hey, we're not going to fire anything off. We're going to assign that to the custom event. And this is going to be the one that's actually firing off a execution. So that's just what it means. And it's a little bit weird how it's set up because it is an input. It's saying, hey, what event do you want to use? However, you can imagine stuff will get in the way here. So you usually want to put it like here, or I usually just put it like straight like this, like underneath, and then have your code going like this. In the end, it's up to you. You could just have like another custom event and just have it here, and then have a custom event come off here. So it's a lot more cleaner. It's up to you how you want to do it. But what we're doing is saying, hey, the timer itself isn't actually firing anything off on a looping or on a delay. It's actually this custom event that we want to fire off. So that's what a delegate is, if that makes sense, guys. So the time here, this is going to be your delay as well as your looping intervals. So if, let's say I do 0.5, what's going to happen is that if I do a print string We're going to just actually for a second because it'll be a lot easier to see. We've got hello. Now, if we start the game, you can see the hello doesn't pop up until 1 second after the game starts. So boom, we've got our delay right there. Okay. I also got to talk about max once per frame. We actually don't need to talk about that. Just don't worry about it. It is like one of those more advanced things. Initial start delay, that is basically saying, hey, how long do we want to wait before we actually set the timer itself? So it is similar to a delay, but it's not in a way. It's saying, hey, if we, let's say we do this, we get 0.5, we're saying we don't want the actual timer to set and start running until 0.5 seconds. So overall, this will be if we did this at 1 and then we start, it will actually be a total of 2. You can see there, hello just came up after 2 seconds. So that is useful for some scenarios. I think you would mostly want to use that for maybe semi-auto weapons. I forgot how I used it somehow. I used it in C++, but it's the exact same principles in Blueprints. But yeah, that's just if you want to make an initial start delay for some reason, you can do that. And then initial start delay variants, you don't have to worry too much about that. Again, it's just like more of an advanced setting. But these, this one here, looping time and event, are ones you want to worry about. So you can see here that we've already got a thing going here. It has a delay. Now let's put this to 0.1. So now after 0.1 seconds, this hello is going to come up. So it comes up instantly, pretty much. If we then tick looping, what's going to happen is that after 0.1 seconds, it's going to fire the print string, and then every 0.1 seconds after that, it's going to fire the string. You can see it's basically going to have that delay of 0.1 seconds, and then 0.1 seconds again, it's going to do that. So the game starts in 0.1 seconds, it's going to fire the print string. In 0.1 seconds again, it's going to fire it again. It's going to do this forever. See there, look at that. Now we've got a loop. And you can see here, the reason why I like this over delays as well is that if, let's say you had a delay, right? Usually you go and you do something like this and you go, hey, if you're shooting or whatever it is, you then have this come over like this. And then you do some weird stuff like that. And it just looks so ugly. It looks very unprofessional. It doesn't look good. Even newbies, people who have just started using Unreal Engine could probably tell that this just doesn't look good. These just aren't really meant to look nice when you go backwards. And they're just not meant for that. There's a lot better ways of doing it. So let's delete all this. And this is one way of doing it. And it gets even more compact and more awesome. It just looks so much nicer with the function version of this. So that's basically for that. You got the output, and that's the handle. Okay, a timer handle is basically, if we promote this, okay, and we're going to call this loop timer. What this is basically a handle is a reference. That's all it is. It's just a fancy name for a reference to a timer. Okay, the handle is saying, hey, what timer do we contain in this handle? Or should I call it a reference? So just imagine a handle, instead of calling a handle, just call it a reference. Okay, you can still call it handle, but every time you think of it, just think of it that it's a reference to a timer. So what we're doing is getting this generic timer reference or handle, and what we're going to do is this return value is the timer itself. So it's nothing like any weird calculation outputs or anything. This return value is simply when we plug it in and is saying, hey, this is the timer. And that's what we're doing. We're plugging this straight into this loop timer reference. And now we're saying that, hey, this variable is this timer. And that's it. So now what we can do is you can pull this off, and you can go and do things like clear. So all you have to do is just type clear, and you can see it says clear and invalidate timer by handle. What that is saying is that's a fancy way of saying, hey, let's deactivate this timer. Okay, now what we've got is we've got this thing here, so you can see where you got pressed or released. You can see this where the debug key comes in. So let's say we get rid of this, and we're going to connect this up to here. Let's move this over a bit like that. So now what's going to happen is that this is going to clear and invalidate a timer by handle or reference. We're plugging in that reference to this timer that we've set into the handle that we want to stop. And you can see here that if we press this, it's going to start it, and then as soon as we release, it's going to stop it. So you can see here, if we hold T and then let go, it stops. Hold it again, keeps going, and then as soon as we let go, it stops. You can see how this can be useful in things like games. Now, where would you use these? You'd use these in places like if you making first-person shooter or third-person shooter games, or just anything with shooting guns, or things that need auto shooting. So if you're making like a magic game and you need like an auto amount of spells, or you need anything with burst fire rate. A burst fire rate or fire mode is a little bit more trickier, but I can show you guys how to do stuff like this later on. But usually how you would have it set up is basically like this. So you would have your AR or IA underscore shoot, which is, I think, this like that. I think mine's already set up, so this won't work because it's already set up somewhere else. However, what will happen is that you'll do on started, you'd plug this into your set timer, and then on completed, you'd clear and invalidate the timer. So then what you're doing is you're saying, hey, as soon as you click your shooting button, it's going to fire this off every, let's say we had this on 0.2 seconds. Okay, let's say you have an AK-47, you hold down your mouse button or your trigger, whatever it is, you're shooting the gun, okay? And what it is, it's not actually shooting constantly because you're holding it down. It's shooting it because you've clicked it, okay? And then the timer is going off automatically. You holding it down doesn't do anything. However, as soon as you let go though, then what it's going to do is it's going to come out of the release and it's going to clear this timer. It's going to deactivate it. And that will stop you from firing. So when you're shooting in games, it actually doesn't keep shooting because you're holding it down. If there was a way that you could figure out on how to click it, but then not unclick it, it would actually constantly fire forever, or until you run out of ammo, whatever. That's basically how it can be useful. Things like auto firing, things like burst, stuff like that. I actually use this in my current first-person shooter that I'm making, so it is very useful and things like that. It makes it so much more simple. Delays are just very hard to work with this type of stuff. However, we are getting into past the 10-minute mark, so I'm going to go and wrap this up. So let's go and delete all of this. Now, I do have a variable here. I mean, not a variable, a function. This function, I'm called it test01. And I've just got an in string called yo. Okay. Why I've done that is, let's go back to our event begin play. I'm going to do set timer by function name. Now you can see this is very similar. You have your time, okay, you got your looping, initial start delay. However, we have function name and object type. This is the same thing with, because we are using a function instead. So let's say I type test01. What this is doing now is that it's going to look for this function called test01 in my character class, and it's going to find it here, and it's going to loop over it. So let's say we plug this in here. Okay. You can see now, if I go and do looping and we do, let's say 0.2 seconds, it's going to do yo, 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 yo. Okay. Now, you can see here what I was talking about before. This is even more compact because we don't even have this test01 function out in the open. It's not even, I see how I've just pulled it out here. It's in my blueprint event graph. I don't even have it in there. I've deleted it. It's just sitting in the functions tab. It's not even in here and it's still calling it. So if you want to have your blueprints all nice and clean, you literally just have your one node like this. Okay. Now the object type, this is just like your normal function. You see when I pull it out? Oh. See when I pull it out like this, you can see target. The object is just target. So you can see that it's self. Okay. Because we are using the same function that's inside our test01, we can just leave that as self. However, let's say we have a weapon class and we want to call a function. Let's say we want to call the shooting function that's inside the weapon class. We'll then, let's say, have to pull off a reference. Let's say this is a reference to an actor. We'll pull it off, and then you would say, you'd go and plug that in and say, hey, this is the object, and or this is the class we want to call it in. You basically treat this like the target. So if you're using a function in a weapon class or a class that's outside of what you're using this timer in, you would then have to somehow get a reference to that target that you want to call. So because let's say if I've got test 01, but I've got 3 test 01s, I've got one of my character, weapon, and act class, your set timer has to know which one it has to choose. And if we just do self, then it's going to go, okay, cool, we're going to search for this inside this character only. We're not going to search for it in weapon class. But if we went and chose this to be weapon class, then and we plugged in a reference to a weapon, then this would search in our weapon class. So I hope that all makes sense, guys. There also is, if I go like this, you can also pause timer by handle, and that will just pause the timer. That's going to stop it. It's not going to deactivate it, but it will just stop it. And then the unpause timer by handle, that's just going to unpause it. So you can pause it, unpause it, or if you just want to get rid of it completely, I just clear and invalidate. You can just deactivate it completely. And most of the time you do want to just deactivate it. You don't usually want to you don't usually need to use these two a lot. I think they'll be very specific. You'd probably use things in if you're doing like puzzle games, and let's say you have a timer that's going on and it's counting. You can then have, let's say it's a puzzle game and you have to get a cube over to another place. Then what you can do is you can have a timer going on, and as soon as maybe they step on a platform, you can pause it, and as soon as they get off that platform, you can unpause it. I'm just thinking of very little mechanics that are coming in my head, but that's something like that, how you can do it. That's basically it, guys. So thanks for coming in. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, because I do try to make them as elaborate as possible for you guys to understand what's really happening. This video has reached the 17-minute mark, so it is a little bit longer than usual, so I'm sorry about that, but however, I will try to cut it down a bit and make it as short as I can. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.